Oh,
Good. My name is Jay Berman, and welcome to Interview with an Entrepreneur. Today is March 14th, 2024, episode 2. Today's guests are Sondra Storm and her husband, Mark Keller. They are the founders of Embarcadero Hospitality Group based in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, Sondra and Mark.
Good to see you, Jay.
good to see you. We're very pleased to be here.
Thank you so much for helping my channel today. Let's jump right in by telling us your background, where you're from, where you grew up, where you went to school, those type of things.
Okay, all the details. Well, so I'll start. My name is Sondra, and along with Mark, we founded Embarcadero Hospitality Group. I was, let's see, born and raised in a small town in kind of central to eastern Oregon called the Dalles. I ended up locating in Portland after going to school at the University of Oregon for some part of my education, and Portland State for a part of my education as well. But ultimately ended up landing in Portland, and have been very much a Portlander. Let's see, before Mark and I started our business, I did work in hotels throughout college, but I had about almost 10 years in another career. I was in the nonprofit and local government space. And so I actually helped start a couple of nonprofits, and did a lot of community coalition work around various community issues, substance abuse issues, mental health, literacy. And that was all before starting our business. In addition to being passionate about hotels and hospitality and our company, I am a dancer, and so I love to dance. I dance with a couple of groups in Portland and do choreography, and yeah. So I guess that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I also grew up in a small town in the Northwest, similar to the Dalles, east of the mountains in Washington, where my dad was a college professor in a small town, but with a good-sized college. And went to school in California, in the Bay Area, and was pointing towards becoming a pediatrician. But I loved singing, sang in about 6 different music groups in college. And my choir director said, "Hey, there's a professional group starting up." I auditioned. I was just going to see the world for a couple of years and then get on with life. But it sort of took off in the classical music world. And so I toured the world for 10 years, and then came back and got a real job. That group's still going strong, and we still see them from time to time. And then got a job in hotels, and then just sort of rapidly worked my way up, and was really thrilled to obviously to meet Sondra and start our own company.
How did you start your company?
Well, it was a little bit of a winding road. I guess I'll start with my journey. As I mentioned, I didn't really have a plan to work in hospitality or to have my own business. My mom was a UPS driver for most of the time when I was growing up. And my dad worked at an aluminum plant for really most of his career. And so my parents were incredibly hard workers, but I didn't really have anybody in the family who was an entrepreneur or kind of modeling, starting their own business. So that was very foreign to me. When I was in college, I started working at hotels, just, the first people who would hire me, I guess. And I really fell in love with the experience. It's such a fun job, if you're in the right hotel and you have the right team, but the amount of exposure to people, it's just can be very addicting if you're a people person, and the ability, to make somebody's day a little bit better, to have an impact on people in a pretty intimate way. When people come and check into a hotel, it's unlike, buying a sweater or even having a meal to some degree, although that's pretty intimate too. But when they're staying at your hotel, they're putting their life in your hands for the night, really. And so it's this exchange that goes a lot deeper than maybe is even on the surface. And I really enjoyed that. I really loved being part of a team and providing great hospitality. And so I ended up working for many years throughout college at a hotel. But I always had in mind, that I wanted to change the world. I wanted to do something, that was, that I was passionate about, and that was about helping people. And so for several years, I was involved in the nonprofit space. I actually started a couple nonprofits. I worked for local government on community issues and did really fascinating work that involved working with coalitions. And so bringing together people from different walks of life. And so the particular funding that I had, we would have to bring together somebody from the business world, somebody from the mayor's office, a healthcare professional, an educator or educational professional, and a whole range of people.
Police department.
And we'd be working on issues like substance abuse issues and mental health issues. And I really enjoyed that work because of the diversity and the dynamics. But I did find, as I was continuing in my career, just the frustration with how slow how slow it is to impact change. And I found myself really drawn to the business leaders that I was working with because of their ability to make decisions and make change, within their company and immediately impact the people who work for them, the customers that they were serving. And I found that really kind of interesting and appealing. At the same time, Mark can speak a little bit to his journey, but Mark had, continued to work in hotels, which is where I'd met him, and was an executive for a regional management company. And I just had always felt that Mark had a little bit more creativity and a little bit more spunk, that his values were a little bit different than the people that he was working for. And so I kind of pushed him to, hey, maybe you should go out on your own. Maybe you should try your own thing. But as we started to go down that path, it became clear that it was really something we would need to do together in terms of, first of all, the actual just man hours, the time that we would need, as well as kind of the set of skills and abilities that each of us had. So that was when we made the crazy decision to go out on our own.
Yeah, no, and Sondra really rescued me from a sort of a more typical type of hotel career, which has, in the case of my company and most companies, has to do maybe more with volume than getting a super high quality. I mean, everybody is concerned with, having customers be satisfied, but in my prior work, I was yearning to take something from sort of 90% of its potential to 98% of its potential, and that was I was really passionate about those kinds of details, and less so for my bosses. And so Sondra, recognized kind of the artistic temperament that I have and that she has, and real passion for details, passion for a heightened level of customer service. And so we basically do the projects that we want to do, as opposed to, somebody else saying, oh, I've got a real wealthy investor and we have 5 Holiday Inn Expresses that we're now taking over next week, that kind of thing. So I couldn't be happier that Sondra had a vision for this that I hadn't really thought of. And we're having a lot of fun, and our properties are each unique and each really interesting, and each of them engages the customers in ways that they're not expecting.
Nice. Now, when you started, did you have any mentors or kind of like a board of advisors or board of directors to help you get started? And how important were they in getting started?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it's something when people talk to me about starting their own business that I often recommend that they at least have some mentors, a formal board of advice. Like there are different structures for that, but at least having some really strong mentors and people who are there for you, because starting your business it's a big task, and it's kind of a scary time to be a scary task. But so to answer your question, I would kind of say yes and no, because when we first started, we definitely had somebody who was a mentor, a business mentor to us, who knew both of us really well and had been, in the business world himself and had helped other businesses as well. And so we had one person who kind of knew us, but was not an expert in the hotel industry specifically, but did have that kind of experience with entrepreneurship and starting business. And so he was very helpful. But as we kind of moved along in our business, we really collected a couple of mentors who became what we call kind of an informal advisory board. And those are folks who, as we started working, we really just recognized, wow, this person has tremendous experience. They're willing to talk to us. And so we kind of captured them. And so we have three folks, and I'll mention them, who've been really helpful to us. Tom Latour. Tom was really one of the driving forces behind Kimpton Hotels. And so he was involved in the vision in the industry of going from real kind of branded cookie cutter hotels, which was dominating the space and still dominates the space, but was really dominating the space, in the 70s and 80s, to the introduction of Kimpton, the Kimpton concept, which was a boutique brand, a chain of boutique hotels that were each unique, that had, represented local and also had a chef-driven restaurant. And so Tom was the longtime CEO of Kimpton, and he's been just a tremendous mentor to us. And then Bob Scanlon, who was the founder of Scanlon, Kemper, and Bard. Bob's experience really relates to doing deals, real estate deals and transactions, and getting financing.
And he's also a genius marketer. Just he kind of fell into it.
Yeah. And so and then Robert Holmes, who is a developer and somebody who has advised countless transactions and has been involved in all kinds of real estate transactions, as well as resorts and resort development.
And one of the things about Robert that's especially nice is that he has a real passion for integrating community benefit into hotel design and into.
Yeah, and Jay, would it be helpful for us to describe what our business is for a second? I
realized
when we talked about ourselves, we didn't really talk about that. So our business has essentially three parts to it. I mean, the connecting piece is hotels. And so I would say hospitality more broadly, but we really do focus on the hotels and the lodging experience. But there are three parts to our business. We are operators at heart. Like we wanted to work in hotels because we want to operate hotels and we want to manage teams and provide excellent service. But our business includes a third-party management company, and so those are properties that we manage for owners. And so an owner may invite us in to manage a property for them because they own the hotel, but they don't have experience operating it. Or we may develop our own project where we are the management company. But management is part of what we do. We develop projects. We usually partner with a developer, but we will identify an opportunity and then bring in investors to finance that project and develop it from idea to project. And then we also do consulting. So especially as we were starting our business, we did a lot of consulting for both public and private entities. And so meaning that we might work as consultants for a city or a port, an urban planning firm, an economic development group, and those parties may be interested in trying to get a hotel in their community, or they may have a piece of land where they're saying, hey, could a hotel be developed here? Would that be successful? So we've done everything from feasibility analysis to working with a team on design. How would a hotel kind of support this larger mixed use development, to recruiting and negotiating hotel operators or developers for cities. And so just to give kind of a range of what we do, our heart is really in operations and in management, but we've done everything from, consulting projects, big and small, to developing our own projects where we've found the opportunity and brought in investors.
Yeah. And, it was great to do consulting as an entree to meeting people and to network. That was part of the reason why we did it. but there are places in the Northwest that, there's no plaque that says, Mark and Sondra had something to do with this, but where maybe a former industrial piece of land that was just blocking a downtown from a river, or a port from the ocean in the case of Everett, has become this just lovely, integrated, wonderful, mixed use downtown space that is being enjoyed by people, with trails and dense residential and so on. And we've been a part of several of those, and those are really, really been very, very fun to do and rewarding. I feel like, oh man, that over there, we had something to do with that. That's great. So
Nice. How did you market your business when it was brand new?
Yeah, well, the kind of business we do, it's really challenging to market our services because the hotel world is pretty dominated by, these big like real estate trusts, and they work with other big companies and big brands
and big management companies.
Yeah, and so really, like Mark mentioned, a lot of early on, our strategy was to do the consulting work because it allowed us to create relationships and to find opportunities as well. But really, relationships was our route for marketing, and so we kind of turned, every person who we thought maybe there would be some lead there, we just, had conversations with. And I think ultimately it was, when we trace back where most of our business came from, it really came through the consulting. Most of it has come through the consulting work that we've done and the relationships that have been built through that, and being able to demonstrate our work. Because even like the Avery Hotel, which is one that Jay is very familiar with, but that came out of a recommendation. We had done some consulting for a group of business owners who were doing a historic hotel downtown Portland, and they've recommended us to probably 3 or 4 different developers who then have hired us. So it for our business, the most effective marketing is the direct boots on the ground, conversations, relationship building.
Yeah, exactly.
And finding people. There are people who are willing to make introductions, and not everybody's like that. And certainly don't limit your interactions or your relationships with people who aren't like that, because they can also result in some really good leads and relationships and projects. But there are certain people who just are connectors, and they're very comfortable making introductions with other people. And we've really benefited from those people who've been willing to do that. And, it's a big thing to kind of use your contacts. We view it as a real honor anytime anybody wants to make an introduction, because that person is kind of taking a risk on us and taking their time, to make this introduction. So we're very grateful for that, and we've had a lot of that.
Yeah, and I would say that, for a lot of the people maybe you're speaking to, Jack, they're businesses of all sizes, right? And that require a small amount of capital or a very, very large amount of capital. One of the real tough things about hotels is that they're very capital intensive. So it's not one of those things that we weren't born into wealth. And so you can't just go and say, oh, I'm going to open a hotel. It's tens of millions of dollars you're talking about, right? And so it required relationships for us to even get involved, because we didn't have tens of $millions, and we don't now, to go build a hotel on our own.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of segues into this question, because what is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur?
Well, there are a lot of hard parts, and maybe my personality isn't your typical entrepreneur. I don't know, but I would say the most difficult thing in my perspective is that there is no safety net. You are ultimately responsible for everything. And having come from working for companies and working for government, I was always a hard worker. Like I've never not been a hard worker. And even when I worked for the government, I had pretty entrepreneurial projects. I usually was designing a program and I was, didn't have a lot of supervision. But what was so different is that when you're working for somebody else, you get paid, whether or not you did a great job. Like maybe you're having an off day, like you're still going to get your paycheck, at the end of the day. Um, for us, like we had health insurance, we had all these things. When you're working for yourself, every, I needs to be dotted and T needs to be crossed by you, until you grow enough where you have employees, but by you. And there's no guarantee, if you're not successful, you're not gonna get paid. And so it's to me the level of kind of hustle that represented it can be intimidating. The other thing I would say, I mean, definitely like Mark was saying, breaking into a new um, into a new sphere where uh, with us like trying to raise money and just being aware of well, I guess I would say being aware of your strengths and weaknesses and recognizing if you have weaknesses, then you better figure out either how to grow that as a strength or find somebody to step in and do it, because your weaknesses, nobody's gonna protect you. That's
Well said.
what do you say?
Well said. No, that's great.
What do you say?
Oh, in terms of the hardest part, I think the hardest part for us is recognizing that we can't do it all, and and to be able to delegate and also hire people. The combination, we're workaholics, Sondra more than I, but we're both workaholics, and we sometimes when you've gotten into a rhythm of the way you do things, it's hard to imagine somebody else having exactly the same kind of culture and the same kind of commitment and so on, because we really value the direct connection with all of our teams. And so I think we're entering that part where we absolutely need to scale up, and scaling up is not easy.
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, I think just the opportunity to follow what you're passionate about. I mean, for us, it's our projects and our teams, making sure, like Mark said, taking it from just not 90%, but 98% of what, we want it to be, or 100% of what we want it to be. And being able to, have that drive and have that vision and really cultivate that. I think there's a lot of freedom, and that is, I mean, you're always accountable to your stakeholders and to the people, who are investing in our projects and to our teams. Like there's a lot of accountability there, but there's also a lot of room to, make it special. And so that, I guess, is what I value. And I would say then the other thing I would add is just, we're very our teams are everything. And so of course in hospitality, you want the guest to have an incredible experience, and that is really special. But for us, that experience only comes from a team that feels really supported and honored. And that is probably the most rewarding thing, is when you kind of get into a pace with a team where you can see the growth happening, you can see people thriving, you can see people maybe taking risks and going outside of their comfort zone and kind of stretching themselves and growing, as much as like that's the most rewarding aspect of what we do.
Yeah, I completely agree. To me, the most rewarding thing is to see our team respond to the needs of a customer. And what's really interesting is that most people think of people just checking into hotels, and they might think about, okay, there's a business person that travels 70 days a year and they check into a hotel, they do their business, they go home. And that certainly is there, but people go to hotels for all kinds of reasons. I mean, they go when they're going to a wedding and they're seeing relatives, some of them for the first time in 10 years, and having these wonderful reunions. Or maybe they're coming from maybe they're coming to something where it's a celebration of life service for somebody that was a loved one. And it's amazing how people open up, as Sondra was saying, when they're sleeping in a place and being there for a few days, they really open up. And the ability for our team, when we have cohesive teams, to do something special for them that really moves them. I mean, this sounds corny, but it happens all the time. And that's my favorite thing, is when a lot of our team members are, highly educated and have gone through a lot of the typical things that we all know about. And quite a number of people who work in hotels never really thought of themselves as having any really career aspirations at all. And they figured that they would be just interchangeable widgets in some company that didn't necessarily care. And to see team members realize that our culture is such that we really support each other, and we are very interested in everyone's career advancement, and watching people who didn't have self-confidence become the kind of people that can really make a customer's day, how much that makes them feel good. And then also stretch their own career aspirations. Those all together are my favorite thing, I guess I would say.
Well, that leads into this question, because I would like to ask you, like, what do you look for when you're hiring employees? Is it education, work ethic, attitude, personality, professional experience? What's really important?
I mean, all of the above, but I think the most important thing is, somebody's personality. I mean, somebody's presence, somebody who, makes eye contact and connects. And depending on what the position is, I mean, there's a lot of variety in terms of specific qualities that we look for. A front desk agent, has to be somebody who likes people and is comfortable, talking and having conversations and feels energized by that, not drained by that. Somebody who is a housekeeper, like, they have to be very detail oriented. They have to not mind hard work. It's very hard work. Somebody who's a general manager, they have to care about their team. They have to care about people. They have to, a general manager does all kinds of things, from, working with budgets and numbers and projections to inspecting rooms. But the main thing for them is they have to really care about their team. And like Mark said, that can sometimes be the hardest part. Like, we care so much, we want to hire somebody who, cares in the same way that we do. So when we're looking for that kind of position, that's what we're looking for. But the biggest thing is somebody who has a good personality, that they care, and that they're engaged, and that they want to be part of something that's special, because that's what we want to create, something that's special.
Yeah, that's perfectly said.
What is your competitive advantage? In other words, what do you do better than your competitors in your industry?
Well, I think we're willing to do a lot of things that our competitors probably wouldn't be willing to do, in terms of the kinds of projects that we take on. And so we did struggle, I think, early on with our business model, because, like I said, the vast majority of hotel transactions and operations are done by these big companies, and we're just, we're a small company. And so our niche has really been owners who have maybe never done hotels before, that are pursuing a project that is maybe not traditional, meaning that there's something, it's not a big, it's not, it may be in a market that's a little bit unusual. We have a couple of projects in Oregon that are what you would call pioneering markets. And so markets where there's not any existing hotels that are like the hotel that we're trying to do. And so that's one element. Another element, again, might be an owner who wants to be involved in the project, but is a first-time owner, and maybe they wouldn't be a good fit for just bringing in a big company who would kind of take over the process, and whom they would have to kind of hand things off to. And so I guess that's what I would say, is we've been more open-minded about the projects that we'll consider, projects that are smaller room count, projects that are in markets that people wouldn't necessarily flock to. And our willingness to really kind of get in there with owners and talk through with them, what the options are. We try to be really straightforward in our analysis, because sometimes those projects are more challenging, but often our owners have multiple bottom lines to where they're not just focused on profit. Because if you just want to make a profit in the hotel industry, then you do the seventh Hampton Inn where you've got six Hampton Inns that are already performing. And so the owners that we're working with are in it for more than just profit. They want to do something special. Maybe they want to do something that is an economic activation in a community. Maybe like in the case of our project in Boise, it's a really special building with a special history, and there's a desire to do something really unique. But yeah, that's what I say.
No, I think that's exactly right. We, it's a real, most of the hotel world is a branded world where if somebody wants to build a Hampton Inn, as Sondra was saying, or a Holiday Inn Express, or even a Hyatt downtown, is they contact a branding company and they're given a prototype for the room in the lobby, and they have their architect just sort of fit that to the site, and then it's kind of just add water. And for us, our niche, I think, is in for owners and for cities and for people, groups of people that really want something that doesn't feel like it's out of a catalog. Some people are comforted by having the room look exactly the way it looked in Vandalia, Illinois, and in Atlanta, Georgia, with exactly the same cinnamon roll and that sort of thing. And then other people, that deadens their senses. And Sondra being a tremendous dancer and choreographer, and me having experienced the music world, there are really magic things happen when you go further than the surface, when you give somebody an experience that's unusual. And since the Avery, I mean, yes, the rooms are beautiful and we have a wonderful staff, but the two restaurants that we have in the building that we don't operate, they're operated by this genius guy who's a a Michelin starred chef and has attracted just amazing, talented people. That experience is so rich and fulsome and sensual in a real way that it's just really an honor to be a part of that.
Where do you see your business in 5 years, maybe 10 years?
Well, like Mark said, we're kind of in the process right now of scaling up. And so we're hiring some additional people to support our growth. We very much want to grow the number of hotels that we operate. And so we're doing that, as we speak. We have two projects that are in early stages of just kind of pre-construction, but are financed and are designed. And those projects are happening. And then we have a third project that isn't quite far along. That project along with a group of people have the rights to develop as a public-private partnership. So the point is, we have 3 hotels that are kind of in the works, and we have other projects that where we're pursuing, but we're really growing rapidly, and in 10 years we'd love to have a really solid team with EHG. Cares as much as we do about the experience, and about the experience both for our guests and for our staffs, and that we have, I don't know, let's say 10 boutique hotels total in our portfolio.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we mentioned early on, we have 3 open properties now. The Avery in Boise, where we're the management company, but we weren't responsible for the project in any way. And it, again, dominated by these amazing food and beverage experience. And then the other 2 projects we were more involved in from before they were, and really involved in them. And they're in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. One in the heart of the wine country in Willamette Valley, and another not too far from the heart of the wine country. And those are both boutique hotels as well. So we're going rapidly from 3 to 6, which may not seem like much, but it's a lot of work. You were asking what our competitive advantage was. I think part of it is that we've gotten involved sooner and sooner and sooner in the process. And so because we can translate what we know about what the customer likes back to the design of guest rooms and so on. Less so in Boise because the owners had real design chops and did that themselves. But in the other cases that we're doing, we're meeting with the architects and the owners even before a dollar is spent on breaking ground or anything, because it's amazing how much you can enhance the guest experience and also save a lot of money if you think from the first moment that the architect puts a line on a paper, you think of all the things that you need rather than trying to do that after the fact. And so many hotels out there are, even a first-time hotel where somebody's really creative, maybe a wealthy person who's had success in something else says, I want to have a hotel. And they go to an architect and say, hey, make this the most beautiful hotel. And that architect knows how to make beautiful spaces and a beautiful exterior, but doesn't have the first clue about the inside workings and the operations of a hotel. So maybe they make a room just 10 inches too small to properly do the laundry, or whatever. And there are just so many dozens of details that we really enjoy getting right from the first moment of architectural design.
What qualities should an aspiring entrepreneur have?
Tenacity. Say tenacity, meaning not giving up. I think that you have to, in terms of quality, you have to be comfortable with failure, because you will have failures, you will have things that aren't successful, and those can really knock you down. And so resilience, tenacity, curiosity about, like, why didn't that work out? What can I learn from that? Same thing, like being able to take criticism and really take it to heart and explore it. I think that one quality I would say is the interest and ability to work on oneself, because for me, and I don't think this is true for every entrepreneur, but for me, it's like the things in your life that surface that are maybe dysfunctional, or maybe are not your best qualities, those are going to bring you down, if you don't address them. And so you have to have this kind of desire for self-reflection and growth and willingness to do that work. I think you also need to have a certain amount of fearlessness. I mean, well, of course, we all have fear, but you have to be willing to kind of put yourself out there and be rejected and things not work out. Because that's going to happen, from time to time as you're building your business.
And for sure. And I think that, the easy answer to your question, the qualities of an entrepreneur, would be someone that, and maybe people can think of at least a person they might think would be this way that's famous, but someone who really just is highly focused on making money, they sort of were born with that, or that became a big interest early on. And definitely those people can be very successful in terms of material success. I think it's really kind of fun, although more challenging, to be not that kind of person, but have to learn how to do that. I mean, we are not motivated primarily by money. And so that makes our job a lot harder, in a sense, because we care about things that some entrepreneurs wouldn't care about. And that has value, right? That enriches our lives, but it also makes it more difficult, because we're, somebody whose whole focus is, okay, is that next decision I'm about to make going to help me make money or not, is not always at the forefront of our mind. Now, that said, we're lucky that we're in a business, and we chose a business where having the attitude about teamwork and having the work experience be far better than our competitors, that thankfully translates into, if done right, more profitability, less turnover. I mean, the amount of turnover that we average in our hotels is usually about a quarter or a fifth of the typical turnover in annually in hotels. And that's a great way to help make profit. And you can even afford to pay people a little bit more than the competitors and really work on career development because you're not constantly training people. And the people that are there share your culture with the new people that come on, rather than it just being sort of random as to whether, Jane cares about her job, so she does a great job, but Bob doesn't care as much, and so he doesn't, you know. So anyway, so I would say that I really think it's kind of nice that the world is evolving in such a way that it is, that a lot of people who wouldn't be your typical archetypal, and this has never been fair because I know most entrepreneurs always have some passion beyond making money. But if that's not a primary or a secondary passion that's really close to the surface, then yes, you really have your work cut out for you, because you have to remember that it's your ability to make money that lets you do these other things, and you have to really integrate that into your design from the get-go.
Last question, I promise. What advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur? Are there any books you recommend or any courses you recommend that they should take before they launch their business?
Oh gosh. Well,
I know
I
it's a
mean,
loaded question.
yeah, I think my biggest advice is to talk to somebody who has been through it before. And I would say to really lay out what your plan is, and to have people who have more experience than you poke holes in it, because you want to go in really prepared with what the pitfalls, might be. And I know it can be a little unpleasant or maybe even a little scary to like open up your work, to other people. But that's the most beneficial thing, for sure. There are a lot of great business books, out there. I don't know in terms of starting your own business, but even just, I mean, the Harvard Business School has a lot of great books. I kind of use their library as resources often. They have a great set of negotiation books.
Yeah.
I think negotiation is important, even if you don't view yourself as like a negotiator in terms of negotiating deals. When you have your business, there's constantly going to be negotiations that you're encountering, whether that is, with your clients or with people you're hiring. So I definitely recommend, reading some negotiation books and getting comfortable in that space. I think sales as well. There are like even if you don't view yourself as a salesperson, if you have your own business, you are going to be a salesperson for your services or your product or whatever it is. So I think, yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to mention some of the things you like. There's some seminal or well-known works out there. There's Getting Past No, Getting to Yes.
Yeah.
There are those series of negotiation books,
Yeah,
and
those
then
are
Harvard has really taken those and refined them a lot. That are wonderful. I would recommend, even though Sondra's done a lot more work in that regard than I. She often gets the audio books and then has me learn them as well, or at least be exposed to them. And there are some tremendous strategies that are in those kinds of books that are surprising to people. It's not, a lot of people think a negotiation is just a black and white transaction where you're trying to get the maximum that you can for yourself, and they're trying to give you the minimum for what you're getting. But these particular approaches don't limit themselves in that way. And they're really, really intriguing things. One of the concepts being getting on the same side of the table with the person that you're negotiating with, to realize what you have in common, your goals that you have in common. And that often can really change the tenor of the negotiations, but it also can change what you're actually doing together in a better way, and make it win-win is an overly used phrase, but if you do these negotiation techniques well, you learn a great deal more about what really motivates the person you're negotiating with, and then you can come up with some creative ideas that otherwise you wouldn't have come up with.
Well, Mark, Sondra, thank you very much for this interview. This was great. I love your aspect regarding turnover. At the hotel that I was at before the Avery, they had 25 people come and go during my 2-year tenure. I was 26. That's pretty, yeah. But like you said, I was at a cookie cutter hotel, and you gave me a wonderful idea for a negotiation course on my channel. So I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you
Yes,
at
thank you,
Thank you so
Jay.
much.
It's our pleasure to be
You
involved.
take care.
Jay.
Be good.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.